How many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into 14 Personnel. I am your host, Justin Wright. Today, we are talking 5 moves to make Week 16, Round 2 of the fantasy playoffs. If you were, lucky enough to make it this far, Week 15 was a shit show. It was the worst. Week 15 was the worst week I think I've ever had playing fantasy. It was just good players were bad players were great. It was weird. It was terrible. If you made it through, if you had the bye week even, you got some work to do. We got 2 games left here. Let's get into it. Before we do, remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us over on Twitter, like the video, comment questions, all that kind of stuff. But most importantly, guys, subscribe to the damn channel. We are like 40 people away from 1,000. So if we can help us get us there, thank you. We appreciate it. Let's get into it. Number 1 on the list, and this was the person I highlighted last week in one of our segments, add Ronald Jones. Leonard Fournette is most likely out for the fantasy playoffs. He's missing 1 to 2 weeks. So at a minimum, he's out this week. And that means Ronald Jones skyrockets up rankings to probably, a top 15, top 12 running back, even with the Bucs now missing wide receivers and really their offense. Ronald Jones is good. Like he's a good running back as in terms of like rushing. So in a high-powered offense that utilizes the running back in the pass-catching game, in the rushing game, in the red zone, Ronald Jones brings a ton of value and needs to be added. He's owned in like 40% of leagues. If you listened to us last week, you already got Ronald Jones. You're ahead of the curve. This is his moment. I was on Ronald Jones to start the season. It went horribly. This is redemption time for Ronald Jones. So hopefully he can make it work. And with that being said, move number 2, start Ronald Jones. If you have him, you play him. This offense, we saw him in limited work, almost ran for 100 yards in like a half's worth of play last night in what was arguably the worst game of the Bucs season. Coming off of a loss against Carolina this week, the matchup isn't ideal, but a pissed off Tom Brady is exactly who I want, leading an offense. And Ronald Jones is going to be a huge beneficiary. Keyshawn Vaughn is terrible. We know this. Fournette's out. Giovanni Bernard is. Who cares? So Ronald Jones, if you're lucky enough to scoop him up, you need to start him. And here's the thing: he's not, forced into your starting lineup as your RB1 or 2. So you're playing him as a flex, and he has breakaway speed. Again, it's a high-powered offense. Carolina's tough, but Ronald Jones and this offense is better. You play Ronald Jones this week. Moving on to another running back I never, ever thought I would have to talk about again. It is Duke Johnson. And it is important to note, Phillip Lindsay is back this week. Malcolm Brown is practicing again. But Duke Johnson inexplicably took the job away from Myles Gaskin this week against the Jets and had a great game. That is a huge piece of this. If you are out there desperate for starting running backs, or your opponent is now down some pieces because of COVID or injuries or whatever it may be, Duke Johnson should be scooped up. Is he a guy you have to pick up and automatically play? Absolutely not. He just played the Jets. Of course he did well. Is it even a guarantee he's the starter next week? No, absolutely not. But I'd rather have him than my opponent have him. And that's really what this comes down to. You're playing defense with this type of ad. Obviously I'm going to prioritize Ronald Jones well over him. I'm going to prioritize our next player on this list well over him also. But Duke Johnson should be added this late in the season. Empty your fab. Just do whatever. Play defense. Look at your opponent's roster and figure out who are they going to try to add, and that's who you snipe. That's the way you're playing here. You're playing defense. All right, moving on. Add Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was a flex play for us last week and has absolutely exploded onto the scene over the last 3 weeks. Double-digit targets in 3 straight games. He has just been an absolute superstar, and at this point, you have to add him, and most likely you have to put him in as a flex, which is crazy to say. I mean, we're in a world where Amon-Ra St. Brown is a better start in the fantasy playoffs than Julio Jones, Allen Robinson, Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, all of these types of guys. And you can't deny the volume. That's where we're at. I mean, he just had a monster game and then got drug tested. The NFL is taking notice, and that means you have to as well. He's available in, just under 70% of leagues over on Sleeper. If he's out there still, he is, one of the top ads. Whether it's him or Ronald Jones, that can depend on your roster, but he needs to be added. And to close us out, and this is where we highlighted Ronald Jones last week, pick up handcuff running backs. One injury can, make all the difference. This late in the year, guys will get shut down for small injuries. Teams aren't going to risk it if they're not in the playoff race. So scoop guys up. And, if there's a major injury to another elite running back, you're looking at a fantastic play potentially. Ronald Jones was the key player here for us last week. Jeff Wilson was another guy to keep an eye on, and, he had a great game as well. So handcuff running backs, they immediately skyrocket in value. You don't have to fight on waivers. Trim that 5th or 6th string wide receiver you're holding, Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, cut both of them, add handcuff running backs, maybe pick up a second defense. But at this point, you don't need to hoard rosters. You're not waiting for bye weeks. You're not anticipating injuries. The only thing I want is guys that can, elevate themselves to like elite levels. Otherwise, I don't care about holding depth. It's irrelevant at this point in the season. All right, everybody, that is all we have for you. Nice and short. 5 moves to make for week 2 of the fantasy playoffs. Hopefully you're listening. Hopefully you're getting some help from us here. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel as we get closer to 1,000. All right, guys, as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.
How many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.